Good to see you.
Hi, virtual friends. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get started. I just want to say thank you all for joining us tonight. Today is our first Conversations for Conservation of 2024, so we're happy to be back. This is going to be it is a monthly speaker series that will be going on until June. This is the first one of the year, so welcome. We're happy to have you all here. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Sarah. I'm the Events and Development Coordinator here with RARE, and I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues at RARE. So we've got Michelle back here, our Education Coordinator, and we have James, our Communications Manager. James is coordinating our virtual friends to make sure that they're having a good time as well. And so tonight the star of the show is our friends Sally, and I'm sorry there's so many of you.
Mark.
I'm Olivia, and I'm Abby.
They're from Wild, Ontario, and they've got some feathered friends with them tonight. They're going to be teaching us a little bit about Wild, Ontario and their history and their conservation efforts. And they're going to introduce us to some birds as well, so we're looking forward to that. Before I pass the baton over to our friends at Wild, Ontario, I'll just share a few quick housekeeping items and do some introductions here. But as for our people here, please feel free to help yourself to some refreshments. We've got hot chocolate, coffee, tea, and some snacks over there, so please feel free to help yourself. We have washrooms just to the side here. For the purpose of our virtual friends, so they're watching us through this digital owl. This thing will follow wherever the sound goes, so I think as much as possible, we'll try to limit questions and comments until the end, just to avoid giving them the old shake around, because it's going to toss them around a bit. And from there, last housekeeping item I would mention is that we do strive to provide and keep these events free of charge for people. And that wouldn't be possible without the generous support of our community donors. So if you happen to be in a position to make a donation tonight, we would be most grateful. And if you would like to and you feel interested, you can feel free to come chat with me after about making a donation. And from there, I'm going to begin and set our stage here with a land acknowledgement to ground us in our conversation tonight. So as many of us know, RARE stewards over 1,200 acres of environmentally sensitive land, but of course we're not the first to do so. And much of the land that is currently in our care is located on within the Haldeman Tract, and that spans 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. It is the traditional territory of the Oklahoma peoples, of the 6 nations of the Grand River, and the Anishinaabe peoples, the Mississaugas of the Credit. Additionally, from this land that we have here, we also steward land that borders the Upper Canada Treaty number 3 and number 19 from 1818, which is also the territories of the Anishinaabe peoples of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. So we honor and respect the sovereignty of these First Nations and their ancestors. And as a settler-founded and led organization, we make this land acknowledgement and admission of the cultural and historical harms inflicted by settlers on Indigenous peoples that led to the generational trauma and systemic injustices that persist to this day, which also include the dispossession of land. So ultimately, it's my intention that our land acknowledgement is going to ground our conversation both here tonight, but also as we move forward in thinking about our relationship to both the land and our community and our interrelationships with all living entities. And with that, I'll pass it over to our friends here.
We have a request that the banner be turned more towards the owl.
Sure.
If I talk over here, does that help?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sally, again. I'm here with Mark, Olivia, and Abby, and we are from a program called Wild, Ontario. Now, what we do at Wild, Ontario is we travel across our beautiful province of Ontario, teaching people about some of our favorite things, like science and nature and birds. Now, I feel like all 4 of us love those things so much, we could probably have you guys here for 5 hours and go on and on and on and on and on about all of those things. But I obviously think I'm pretty funny. Some people might disagree. And so when we travel across Ontario, we bring along with us some of the very special guests that you guys are probably here to see, and we get the privilege of working with at Wild Ontario. So the animals that we work with at Wild Ontario aren't just any sort of animal on the entire planet, even though that would be really cool. We work with a very special group called the raptors. Now, when I say the word raptor, I get a few reactions, obviously. What do you guys think of when I say the word raptor? Like, what's the first thing, that pops up into your head? Basketball, right? How many of you guys have basketball? Some of you guys. Jurassic Park, yeah. And we'll see if there's anybody on the chat as well. You guys can participate as well. So usually, those are the first few things people think of when we talk about working with raptors. Most people say either that's the Toronto Raptors, or you're talking about a dinosaur. Or you think of the movies Jurassic Park, or maybe you think of a specific dinosaur like a velociraptor or a T-Rex. You guys can see these travel crates that they work with. Obviously, there's no giant basketball player in there, and there's no extinct dinosaur jam-packed in there either. We work with a very special group of animals called the raptors that sometimes people call birds of prey. Yeah. Now, you guys heard of that term before?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Now, I have a bit of a problem with the term birds of prey. It's a bit of a personal problem because when we're talking about birds of prey, we're talking about birds, okay, everyone knows what a bird is, that hunt for another animal, and the animal that they hunt is called their prey. So, given that, can you name me a bird of prey? Can you name me a bird that hunts for another animal?
Eagles, owls.
Hawks, yeah.
Owls.
Owls.
Eagles.
Eagles.
Warblers.
Warblers. Anything else?
Osprey.
Osprey, nice.
Kestrel.
Kestrels, yes. Blue jays, sure.
Falcon.
Falcons, nice. You have one?
Robin.
Robins, yes. Why not?
Turkeys.
Turkeys, yes. Why not? Any from the chat?
Not yet.
Come on, guys. You guys also have to participate. Now, here's the thing. I think you guys are a pretty smart crew because when we travel across Ontario, we talk to thousands and thousands of people, and I've asked thousands and thousands of people to name me a bird of prey. Most people will say hawks, eagles, owls, falcons, and some smart people will say osprey, and then that's about it. But I have a few friends over here that thought about it. We're thinking about birds of prey. We're thinking about birds that hunt another animal. So the list goes further than hawks, eagles, owls, falcons, osprey. We can include robins, and we can include blue jays. We can include warblers. We can include penguins and gulls and ducks and chickens and turkeys. You said turkeys, I forgot about that. Woodpeckers, cardinals, chickadees, crows, ravens. Basically, many, many, many birds on our planet hunt for another animal. Many of these birds on our planet are birds of prey. But there's a reason why when we talk about birds of prey, when we think or try to name a bird of prey, the first few birds that come to mind are those hawks, eagles, owls, and falcons. Because they're unique. You guys already know that. And they're unique because of the way they hunt. So if we can take all the animals or all the birds in the entire world that are birds of prey, we can separate them into two main groups. Over here, it's like this large, large group of tens of thousands of birds that hunt with their beak. So that's robins and turkeys and blue jays and warblers and herons and ducks and gulls. And then over here we have our very unique group that are called the raptors because they hunt with their raptorial feet. So we actually have a few raptor feet we can probably pass around. You guys are a small crew. We're Olivia and Abby can bring some around. You guys can pass it to them. They can just see it as well. So all the birds that we work with, plus one special one, are all raptors. We worked with hawks and owls and falcons, and those are the very special, unique birds of prey that hunt specifically with those feet. All but one are all raptors, so they all hunt with their feet. The second big thing that makes our birds special is why we have them. So all the birds that we get to work with and the birds that you guys are going to meet today, they come to us for a reason. So we didn't go to a pet store to purchase any of them, and we didn't, climb a tree and grab one out from the wild. All of these birds come to us because they no longer can survive out in the wild. Something has happened to them. But they kind of get a new chance at life. Their story, it makes a really big impact on all the people that they meet, and we can teach about human impact on wildlife out there using these very special animals that we get to work with. So what we'll do tonight is we brought 4 of the amazing birds that we get to work with at Wild Ontario. My friends will try and walk them as close to you guys as possible. Some of them might be a little bit nervous of the aisle, but we'll play it by ear. And if we don't get a chance to have a close enough look, at the end of the program, we'll bring out a few and you guys can come on up and take pictures and get better looks and ask a few questions as well. That sound good? All right, so we can probably start getting ready to take out our first bird now. All the birds that we work with, this is kind of their job. They're quite used to this. We do a lot of training to teach them how to, travel to schools and parks and wherever. But to help them out, to help them feel a lot more comfortable, what you guys are doing right now is amazing. So sitting nice and still, and that way we can bring the birds nice and close. You guys can get a nice close look at each of the birds, hopefully. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a background as well for our program. We started off as a rehab center. So way back in the day, way older than me, I feel pretty old, but way back in the day in the 80s. At the University of Guelph, where the vet college is, there was a doctor, a vet there, who realized that there weren't a lot of people helping out birds specifically, right? There were all these vets in the entire world studying to work with cows and dogs and cats and horses, but there's a lack of help for birds out in the wild. And so he took that gap and he said, hey, we need to help these guys out there in the wild. So this doctor, Dr. Bruce Hunter, he created the Wild Bird Clinic. So he created a little hospital to help wild birds. But there was a very special bird named Socrates. He was a turkey vulture. And he unfortunately came in, obviously he wasn't named Socrates yet, but he came in with an injured wing after having been hit by a car. And it was so injured that they had to amputate it. He was now a one-winged vulture. But a one-winged vulture cannot survive out into the wild. So Dr. Bruce Hunter saw another gap. He says, Socrates can be used to teach people about these amazing creatures that not a lot of people like. Turkey vultures are kind of weird, they're kind of gross, they're kind of ugly.
Yeah, they're
but,
very ugly.
Yeah, I think they're beautiful in their own way. And so Bruce Hunter, he traveled with Sock teaching people about birds, and that's kind of the basis of our program. Now, we don't do any rehab, but we do a whole bunch of teaching. And so with that, I think we're ready to meet our first bird. We always like to start off the program with what I think is Ontario's most ferocious raptor. But I say that, and you have a look at Artemis here, and you might not completely believe me. Now, Artemis here, Olivia can walk Artemis around. She can get pretty close. She's an old pro at this. Artemis, as an American kestrel, These guys are the smallest falcon species here in North America. And in Ontario, the smallest of our 4 falcon species. And this is as big as she gets. She's full grown, she's not a baby. This is as big as they get out there in the wild. And to be quite honest, she's pretty tiny. Why would anyone think this bird is the most ferocious raptor? Well, here's the thing. I think American kestrels, they are small, but they're quite mighty, which makes them one of my favorite birds, because I am also quite small, and I like to think that I am still quite mighty. Now, as a tiny little American kestrel, she's a falcon. And falcons, they are built for speed. So when I think of falcons, falcon starts with F, and fast starts with F. That's how I remember. Falcons are fast. They are basically the sports cars of the raptor world. You can have a look at Artemis over there. She's nice and streamlined, just like a sports car. She's nice and smooth and compact, just like a sports car. She has long pointed wings that fold over her back. Not like a sports car. But those long pointed wings and that long tail make her sleek and slender to zip through the air, hunting and flying at tip-top speeds. Now, American kestrels, they are quite ferocious, not only because they're tiny, and that means a lot of the things that they are hunting are quite big, but they do it in a wide variety of ways. As a kestrel, she'll eat anything from, you name me a tiny creature in Ontario, she would probably hunt it. So she'll eat insects like dragonflies and grasshoppers and crickets, but she'll also hunt rodents like mice and voles. She can, find a nest of baby chipmunks, teeny tiny ones. Sure, why not? And they also hunt other birds as well. So a lot of songbirds like chickadees, goldfinches, and sparrows, up to the size of herself or even bigger. So a kestrel out in the wild can take down a robin, can take down a blue jay, which is way bigger than she is. Now, while she's doing that in 3 different ways. So let's say Artemis, switch spots with you so they can get a better look. We can pop it back up there. Now, Artemis, let's say she's out there in the wild and she's maybe hungry for some insects. She's hungry for, let's say, a dragonfly. And I'm gonna ask you guys a question, very difficult question. How many of you guys have seen a dragonfly before? All right, now, how many of you guys have tried to catch a dragonfly? Maybe at a school program, or maybe you have a own bug net at home. Now, would you guys agree that dragonflies are pretty fast? Here, thanks, Artie. You guys agree, dragonflies are pretty fast. They're zipping through the air, big open spaces. They are the hunters in the insect world. They're chasing all these tiny little mosquitoes and midges in the air. Well, these guys are the hunter of the bird world, so they're going to catch dragonflies in the air simply by flying faster than a dragonfly at almost about 60 kilometers an hour. And this flight that we call direct pursuit. She's just going to be sprinting on her wings after these dragonflies, zipping through the air, catching one in her foot, and she'll hold that dragonfly like an ice cream cone. She'll rip the head off, rip the wings off, munch on the juicy abdomen or the body of the dragonfly, while she's still flying and chasing and catching a second dragonfly. And she'll rip the head off, rip the wing off, eat the juicy body, while she's still flying and chasing another one and another one. And kestrels can catch up to 5 to 6 dragonflies all on the wing without even taking a single break. It's like, imagine running laps around your schoolyard and eating an entire pizza at the same time. That's a lot of work and probably, great meal, but a lot of work. Now, that is amazing, right? She can just zip through the air flying faster than dragonflies. But that's not even the fastest kestrel can fly. In the falcon world, the most famous type of flying is called the stoop dive that peregrine falcons can do. I'm sure you guys have heard of peregrine falcons. This is a wing of a peregrine falcon. They are the fastest animal to have ever existed on our planet, faster than any dinosaur that has ever existed. Peregrine falcons dive at almost 400 kilometers an hour, which is mind-boggling. Their little cousin, the American kestrel, can obviously not go as fast, but still pretty quick. They can go about 115 kilometers an hour in their stoop dive. And they do that when they're hunting for birds. When a kestrel sees a flock of chickadees, she says, "That's a great meal for me." She's gonna find the slowest, fattest chickadee in that flock, and she's going to dive after that chickadee. She'll tuck in both her wings, slick back all her feathers, and dive beak first towards this chickadee, faster than most people should be driving on the highway. Now, right before she hits that bird, right, she's diving beak first. I want to imagine this tiny bird torpedo diving beak first towards this chickadee. She has to kill it at some point, and she can't just smash into this chickadee with her face, because that's not very comfortable, and she's a raptor, so she has to use her feet. So in one quick second before she hits that chickadee, she's going to turn 180 in the air. She's going to open up her wings, fan out her tail, bring her feet where her beak was, and she's going to ball them up into two little fists, and she is going to punch that chickadee out in the air at 115 kilometers an hour, which, if you were a chickadee and you got knocked out at 115 kilometers an hour, you are no longer a chickadee. You are a lunch for an American kestrel like Artemis. Now, let's say Artemis, maybe she is slowing down and maybe she missed that chickadee. Maybe that chickadee wasn't as slow as she thought. And that chickadee is now in her foot, but not completely dead. What she can use is an extra feature on her beak. Maybe Olivia can do a little lap around again, and you guys can have an up-close look at Artemis's beak. Falcons have an extra notch on the side of their beak called a toenail tooth. And that extra little notch on their beak helps them break the spine of birds if they, let's say, punched that bird out, or I guess kicked the bird and missed a little, and that bird is still flapping. A flapping bird is very difficult to eat. So she can use that toenail tooth, break the spine of the bird, and that is a much easier way for her to eat and pluck out all the feathers on that dead chickadee, which I think is amazing. Now, for Artemis, we talked about how she hunts insects. We talked about how she hunts other birds, but there's still a big group of animals that they would totally love to eat: rodents. Kestrels, they love these big open areas like farm fields and grasslands and meadows where there are a ton of rodents. But when they're hunting for a rodent, they're actually going to slow down their speed. They're not going to use their speed anymore. They're actually going to slow down their speed so much that they're flying at about 0 kilometers an hour, which sounds kind of weird, right? But it's actually pretty impressive for an animal to stay in the air and not move. They're not moving forward, they're not moving backwards, they're not moving side to side or up and down. And there's a very special word for that type of flying. Do you guys know what type of flying I might be talking about? Not gliding. Yeah, gliding is similar where the bird's body isn't moving, but, or I guess they're not flapping, so
they're still moving.
Yeah, but they're still moving forward. It's a type of flying that hummingbirds can do. Sir? Yeah, they flap their wings, and they flap their wings so quickly that the bird is in one spot in the air. Hovering, yeah. And hovering, it can be very, very difficult. Only hummingbirds can truly hover, and kestrels. And while they're hovering, a kestrel is over this big open area trying to hunt for rodents, but they're not actually looking for the rodent itself. A kestrel, when it's hovering over this big open area, it's scanning these big open fields for mouse pee. Sounds really weird, and that's pretty gross, That's an odd way to look for your prey, to look for their pee. But a kestrel and a lot of birds have one extra superpower. All the birds get all the superpower. They have one extra superpower. They can see one other color that we can't, right? Now, when we look across this room, what colors do we see? You guys shout it out. Shout out some colors. White, green, blue, green, orange, red, yellow, brown, white, right? Like all of these, okay, yeah, purple, exactly. And you guys all also are seeing these colors, correct? Right? Everyone is also seeing these colors. Now, here's the thing. Artemis, she has one other color. If she could speak English, she would name us one other color. She can see an ultraviolet, which is this extra color on the purple side of the rainbow that a lot of body fluids glow in, like pee and blood. So, it's kind of hard to imagine, but we have a special bottle of mouse pee here, and I need a brave volunteer. Do you want to come on up? What do you think? Okay. You can both come on up. Okay, so I'm going to get you both. Stand here and face the audience. All right. Now, what's your name? Sorry? Royally? No, what's your name? Adela? All right. Now, both my brave volunteers, we're going to do a thought exercise. Imagine them as a farm field. And I need you guys to slowly, because Artemis is behind you, open up your arms like this. Can you do that? Amazing. Now, these guys are one big farm field. Okay? I know it's a little weird to imagine. And I am a mouse. All right? Everyone picturing that?
Yeah.
And I am going to leave my mouse den. And I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. Tiny rodents are always hungry. And actually, me as a human, I'm also always hungry. I need to look for some food today. So I walk around my farm field looking for maybe some seeds or maybe some leftover corn from a cornfield or a few nuts and dried fruit. And I approach my farm field. Bread. It's just a liquid. All right, and I need you guys to be a farm field. Farm fields don't move. That's weird. Okay, now I leave my den. I look for some seeds, and I find some seeds over here in my farm field, and I eat it. And then I'm gonna drop a drop of pee. You're gonna keep your arm up for me, bud? All right, I'm gonna drop a drop of pee. And then I continue walking around, and I find maybe a pile of corn. And I'm also going to drop another drop of pee. My farm field keeps moving away from me. And then I continue walking around, and maybe I find like an acorn. I'm going to drop. Wait, farm fields don't move. Okay, I'll put it on. That's weird. I don't pee on myself. Alright, so I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop another drop of pee on my very brave farm field. And then I continue walking around and I'm going to drop another drop of pee. Another drop of pee. Now here's the thing. As a rodent, I have a great sense of smell. And I'm all full up of seeds and nuts. And I need to go home to take a nap. As a rodent, with my extra great sense of smell, I'm going to smell my way back home. I'm going to smell my own pee. And I'm going to smell my own pee all the way back home, and that way I never get lost, right? This is my territory. I've dropped all my pee in this farm field. This is my territory. This is my home, and I can follow these trails wherever I want to look for food and go back home. Now, kestrel, they can see an ultraviolet. They can see mouse pee in a totally different color, right? If you guys all look at our farm fields, do you guys see my pee?
No.
No. But if we were a kestrel, this is what it would look like. Okay, I need you guys to open up your arms. You're still a farm field for me. And can you face the audience? Amazing. This is what my pee would look like under. Turn your arm this way, bud.
Wait a second.
And it's just glowing bright purple. Show our friends up. Show our friends.
Can you turn towards us?
Look at that. And so a kestrel can follow these bright purple dots, like a dot on a treasure map, all the way back to a mouse's house. And that way they can easily find a mouse in this giant open field. Thank you guys for being so brave. It's not actually mouse pee. You will be able to wash it off. So good water. Okay. Did not put mouse pee on you.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing, right? If you can imagine a kestrel hovering over this big open field, they would look down at this farm field. They would see these bright purple dots and follow that trail all the way home. Now, given that because she's so small, she came out, you guys were probably not scared of her. You probably thought she was pretty cute. But I think with all the different ways that a kestrel hunts and all the animals that they can hunt using those hunting strategies, I think that is what makes these guys so strong and mighty out there in the wild, even though they are very small. Now, Artemis, we obviously have to do her a bit of justice. She's here because she's actually really, really cute, right? You guys admit that. Alright, she's so cute. She's not ferocious, she doesn't look scary at all. But that's exactly what happened to her when she was a young baby bird. Somebody also thought she was so cute that they wanted to take her home. And so they took Artemis out from the wild and kept her in a pretty small cage that obviously was too small for a falcon. And we don't exactly know what happened, but she ended up back out into the wild. Whether that person realized, man, this bird poops so much, or she somehow escaped, she was back out into the wild, but not as a wild falcon should be. She was raised by humans, which means that in her little brain, she doesn't really know that she's a kestrel. She doesn't know that she's this strong, mighty predator that should be out there in the wild hunting for dragonflies and punching birds out in the air. She kind of looks at this room and says, well, these are the animals that fed me and raised me when I was a young bird, and that's probably the animal that I am. And so we can't teach her otherwise. That's something that she will know and think for the rest of her life. But that also makes her an excellent education bird.
How did you know? Sorry. How did you know that she was hand fed? Where did you find her? At what stage?
Yeah. So when she was back out into the wild and someone saw her, she was very comfortable around humans, which a wild kestrel wouldn't be. All her wing feathers and tail feathers were all banged up and broken. Actually, she basically didn't have a tail. When she came in, she was scared.
Wow.
It's pretty cute, but she didn't have a tail, which is a big sign of being kept in a cage way too small. And her talons were all very neatly trimmed. She's done by a human, not by herself out in the wild. And the big thing was her comfort, right? She was kind of behaving like she did not care about being in a room full of people, which wild birds would care about. But yeah, it makes her an excellent education bird. She's been doing this for 14 years now, meeting thousands of people across Ontario and teaching them about such a small and mighty predator that not a lot of people know about. So before we put her away, I always like to give people a few clues as to how to find kestrels out in the wild. Great, they're out there, but how many of you guys have seen a kestrel? All right, some of you guys, yeah. Now, there are a few clues. We all watch Artie. I don't know if you guys noticed while she was kind of hanging out with us today. Notice that she does her kestrel dance. They bob their heads up and down, and they bob their tails up and down as well. So if you ever see a tiny bird on a telephone wire, bobbing their head up and down, bobbing their tail up and down, and they're dancing alone. Because no other bird wants to dance beside this crazy predator out there in the wild. So keep an eye out for kestrels, especially around here in those big open areas. Kestrels love that kind of habitat. So I think I'll pass it over to Mark to take any questions you guys have of Artemis or kestrels themselves.
Does anyone have any questions about kestrels? Yeah.
How old is she?
How old is she? She's 14 years old right now. She's an old lady for kestrels. normally in the wild they'll live a lot shorter, but because she's in our care and we give her nice food and a place to live, she can live a lot longer.
What is the average lifespan of a kestrel?
Yeah, they will live probably, in the wild, 15 is pretty good, 10 to 15. In captivity or under human care, we can almost double their lifespan. And what we're really doing is stretching out their senior years. So out in the wild, when you're old, you slow down, right? Just like us. So she could, her vision might start to go, she might experience some arthritis in her feet, which makes her not as strong of a grabber, which is her main tool of hunting. She might not fly as fast, and when you slow down out in the wild, you're losing all your food. In captivity, we can basically feed her up until she's an old lady, which she kind of is right now, and so we can stretch that out to around, hopefully, 20 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
How did you get her name?
How do we get her name? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So Artemis is a Greek god, I believe. God, messenger god?
Of the hunt. Yep.
Of the hunt.
Yeah.
So because she's such a ferocious hunter, we named her after the Greek god of the hunt.
Cool.
Where did you find her?
Where do we find her?
Yeah, so we didn't find Artemis ourselves. All of the birds that we get come to us from a wildlife center or a wildlife hospital, where people, if they maybe see an injured bird, they see a bird that doesn't look like it's doing very well, they might call these wildlife hospitals and these wildlife doctors, and they say, hey, we have a bird who, isn't flying away, which they should be. And they can bring that bird to a wildlife hospital. And at the wildlife hospital, if the vet team say, oh, this bird is very comfortable around people, it probably won't survive out in the wild, then they give us a call and say, hey, we have a bird, it needs a home. Would you like to, meet this bird and see if it's a good working bird for an education program? Yeah.
I saw on your website you have a male American kestrel named Apollo. Is that her mate?
Yeah, so Apollo actually, we just made a post. Apollo recently passed, and he was not her mate. They also weren't even related at all, but they came to us with a very similar story. And I think it happens a lot, especially with small birds, right? A bird that, quite honest, she's cute, right? She kind of looks like a budgie sometimes, and she behaves like a budgie sometimes. So it's a very common thing that we find in kestrels and small birds, where people try and take them as a pet. So basically identical stories, but they weren't related and they weren't mated either. They kind of didn't care about each other because they were that imprinted, right? They did not recognize each other as a kestrel at all, right? They recognized themselves as humans. So, both of them probably would rather breed with us than each other.
So our next bird that we're bringing out is a lot bigger than little Artemis here, and it's actually one of the most common species of raptors seen in southern Ontario. If you guys have ever been driving down the highway, seen a massive bird, yeah? Most of you? Chances are that bird was a red-tailed hawk. Now, can anyone guess why they're called red-tailed hawks? What do you think?
Yeah, like this.
Genius. Exactly. But that's actually not always the case. Adult red-tailed hawks have red tails, but juvenile red-tailed hawks actually just have a plain brown tail. So if you see a hawk and it has a red tail, it's a red-tailed hawk. But if you see one and it doesn't have a red tail, it might be a red-tailed hawk still. So one of the best ways to tell them here in southern Ontario is you want to look at their belly. Because once we get Indy here out, you'll see he has a nice white belly, and then right across the middle, there's this dark streaky band of brown. And that's pretty distinctive of red-tailed hawks here in southern Ontario. But it still gets more confusing. So not only do they sometimes have red tails, sometimes not, if you go to different parts of North America, sometimes they don't have the belly band, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they're just all dark underneath or all light underneath. And hawk identification, because of that, is really difficult because there's so much variation between them. It looks like Indy here is out. Now, unlike Artemis over here, who's really energetic, chasing birds, chasing mice all over the place, Indy here, I find him to be a lot more relatable because Indy is ridiculously lazy. And I love being lazy. I'm sure you guys all love being lazy too. But for us humans, when someone calls you lazy, it's generally an insult, right? Like, no one likes to be called lazy. But for Indy here, it's actually a really good thing to be called lazy because it means Indy is conserving his energy really well. So while if you look at Artemis chasing around birds, she's wasting tons of energy to catch that food. Indy here, when he's hungry, he just finds a nice tree and sits down and waits. So if you look closely at those hawks as you're driving down the highway, you might notice that they're always just staring at the ground. And it's not that they're just empty-headed, just thinking about their own stuff in their own world. They're actually actively hunting. And so what they're doing is they're surveying the ground underneath them, looking for prey items that are easy to take down. So they might look across a nice farmer's field, look off into the distance, and see a little rabbit hopping along. Now, there's two problems with that. One, it's far away. And so if Indy wants to go and catch that rabbit, he has to fly all the way across the farm field and grab the rabbit. Other problem is, rabbits are really fast. And if he has to fly all the way across that farmer's field to catch that rabbit, and on the way it spots him, it's just going to scoot away. And that's the end of the story. And now Indy has wasted a ton of energy trying to catch this rabbit and gets nothing out of it. So he's just going to let that rabbit go. He can live another day, and he'll just keep waiting. He might wait an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then all of a sudden, a little squirrel runs up to the base of his tree. And he looks down, and he sees the squirrel, and he has to think, is this worth it? But have you guys ever tried chasing a squirrel?
No.
Yes.
Some of you? Yeah.
Yes.
Why might you not have tried chasing a squirrel? Do you think you could catch one?
No, because they're too fast.
Exactly. And so Indy actually thinks the exact same way as you guys. He sees a squirrel, he's thinking about if he should do it or not, and all of a sudden the squirrel's running away, and oh, well, it's gone too. So, missed out on that snack, but doesn't really matter because he probably wasn't going to catch it anyways. And then, again, that would be just more wasted energy. But now, Indy sees the perfect opportunity. Little mouse just goes and scampers up to the base of the tree and just sits there, feeding on a nice little dandelion seed. And he looks down at it, the mouse doesn't notice him at all, and so he thinks, this is the one I'm going to go for. And he goes and he spreads out his nice big wings, and he gets ready, and then he just plops down on it. Doesn't fly, just simply lands on the ground. And if he's lucky, he'll land right on that mouse, and now he has his perfect little snack. And if he misses the mouse, then all he did was fall onto the ground. And falling doesn't really take energy. So he just goes and flies back up to his perch and waits for the next thing. Now what you saw there, Indy did a nice little rouse where he went and ruffled all of his feathers, and that's just to go and get some of that air circulating through his body, help clean out some of the dust and whatever, dead skin. And it means that he's really comfortable right now around us, which is great to see. Now, like Artemis, you can't talk about Indy without talking about Indy. So Indy was found on a farmer's field, on the ground, which is kind of bizarre for a red-tailed, right? We always see them up in trees. And when the people that found him got closer, they noticed that he was really skinny and he had wires around his ankles. Which doesn't sound very fun, right?
What did he have that?
That's a good question. So I want you to look at him right now. Can you see how he still has stuff around his ankles? Right now he has some really nice kangaroo leather which is really soft around his ankles, doesn't hurt him at all. But we put that gear on him just in case something spooks him and he tries to fly away, because we don't want anyone to get hurt from the birds flying. And we also want to make sure that Indy doesn't get loose, because he can't survive on his own in the wild. So it'd be a bad thing if he just took off. And so when they found him, he had these wires around his ankle. Someone was trying to keep him as a bird, probably as a falconry bird, but didn't really know what they were doing, probably didn't have a license for it. And so they made this makeshift gear that likely was very painful for Indy to wear. And so they took him in, brought him to a rehab center, and while he was at the rehab center, they were going and letting everything heal up. He got imprinted just like Artemis. So between someone also keeping him as a pet and being at a rehab center, Indy is now no longer releasable into the wild because he simply doesn't know how to hunt on his own. So does anyone have any questions about red-tailed hawks?
We have a question from the chat.
Sure.
It's related to, I think, the kestrel. What do you do to exercise her?
That's a great question. So all of our birds have nice big enclosures. So while we're not out working with them or training them, they're free to fly around in there, get as much exercise as they want. So that's the main component of their exercise.
Thanks.
If you think about it, exercise is weirdly a very human thing, because these birds, they, especially out in the wild, they're not eating an excess amount of food or calories, let's say, and they're like, oh, I'm getting fat, I gotta exercise and burn that out. They are, I guess, maintaining their fitness because they have to. They have to hunt, they have to defend a territory, and then they hunt as much as they need to. So exercise can be it's a bit of a weird thing because these guys, they don't technically need to exercise. We are watching their weight every day and making sure that they're in a healthy body condition, and then we feed as much as they need to and not an excess amount.
Yeah?
Did
Sorry.
did he ever get hurt?
Did he ever get hurt? So not that we know of. He did have those wires around his ankles, which are probably really painful and might have cut into his feet a bit, but he didn't get hit by a car or hit a window or anything like that. But because he's so accustomed to humans, we can't just let him go into the wild because he can't hunt, and he's comfortable around humans, which isn't always great when you have a nice big bird like this. Yeah?
Why was he skinny?
Why was he skinny? That's a good question. So Indy, because he had those wires around his feet, we think that he just didn't know how to hunt very well on his own, and so he wasn't getting enough food. And when you don't eat a ton of food, you lose a lot of weight, right? And so if someone hadn't found Indy and brought him into a rehabilitation center, Indy might have just not made it out in the wild because he couldn't get the food he needed to survive. Mm-hmm.
How old is he?
How old is Indy?
Oh, Indy is, do some math now, he's 19, he's turning 20 this year.
So older than a lot of you guys. Yeah.
Do the birds have their favorites among you guys?
The birds generally don't care about us. Actually,
Yeah.
we put a lot of time and effort into gaining the birds' trust so that they know that the team that work with them consistently won't, try and hurt them. And they might be more comfortable with some of us over others, but favorite is a bit of a stretch. It's a one-sided relationship. We love them, they tolerate us, but we give them food.
Okay.
And someone's consistently giving you food, you're not gonna hate them. Yeah?
How fast do they fly? I mean, you say that they don't really like to, exert much energy,
Yeah.
but how fast do they fly, like in comparison to the
Do you know?
The owls, the all
Yeah,
night folks
I
can
guess
see.
we, do you wanna
Take up was the owls that all night folks can see too.
pop Indy back to the virtual folks. Yeah, the red-tailed hawks, they don't fly particularly fast because that's just not how they're kind of, I guess, built. They are quite lazy birds, so I would say, you know, on a good day, if he can catch a bit of wind, maybe he'll match Artie's speed of 60 kilometers an hour. Yeah, but you know, they're not really ever beating their wings to fly at a speed. They're just kind of soaring and plopping and landing on some food. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually have a red-tailed hawk wing right here. And if you compare that to our peregrine falcon, you see they're quite a bit different. Here's a little fountain. What's a big difference you guys notice? Size. What do you think?
Color?
Color.
The shape.
Shape. Those are all great, yeah. So, the big one here is actually shape. So, if you look at our falcon wing here, it's nice and pointed and streamlined, so they can fly really fast. But if you look at our hawk wing, it's pretty big and round, which is not great for flying fast, but it's really good for catching updrifts in the air, so they can just soar along through the sky. If you ever look up and see big hawk flying over, it's also probably a red-tailed hawk, especially if it's not really beating its wings. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, so here is the red-tailed hawk wing. So you can see it's nice and big and round. It has a really big surface area. If you compare that to our falcon wing here, it's a lot more pointed and streamlined.
A question from the chat: do these birds have prey that hunts them?
Sort of, sometimes.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the bird. So, you know, Artemis, the kestrel, definitely has predators. Maybe a faster falcon, or, you know, if an owl can find one roosting at night, an owl would totally take a kestrel if they can sneak up on one. For Indy, there's not many. The big predators that I can think of for red-tailed hawks would be great horned owls. And actually for a lot of the birds, fox and coyote, if they can find one on the ground. Because neither of those animals are climbing up a tree. And then for birds that are still young, so in the nest or as an egg, much more. Weasels would hunt, you know, if they can find a nest and they can find a baby red-tailed hawk, a weasel would totally take a nestling red-tailed hawk. They're ferocious tiny little things. Raccoons love to hunt bird nests or raid birds' nests. They love eggs. Yeah, and that's basically about it.
I have another question. So, do these guys migrate at all, like during the winter and stuff, like to warmer or colder, like from colder climates and stuff?
Yeah, so some raptors will, but red-tailed hawks not really. They do kind of a partial migration, so a lot of northern red-tailed hawks, if they lose a bit of food resources up north, there's definitely less animals out and about in the winter, they might move down a little bit, maybe to the States.
Okay.
But, you know, the red-tailed hawks that we have here in Ontario, they would stay around all year.
Wow, it gets pretty cold up there.
Yeah.
But then a lot of our owls and falcons will.
Yeah.
I think kestrels also do it.
Yeah,
partial.
kestrels will also do a bit of migration as well. Yeah.
Are there more red-tailed hawks than other raptors, or just that we see them easier because they're lazy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's mostly because of their behavior. They love hanging out in big open areas. They are lazy, so they're sitting around. I believe the most numerous, so number-wise, raptor that we have are Cooper's hawks. So they're like a accipiter, so they're a different kind of hawk, but not as lazy. They're hunting for birds. They're more like hawk falcon in between.
Not broadwings.
No, I don't think so. Red Cooper's hawks. Yeah, okay, let's do one more question, because I know our next guest is ready to go, and I think you guys will.
Instead of migrating, why can't they just stay in this room in the warm?
Well, that's a great question. Instead of migrating, why doesn't Indy just, you know, stay in this room for the warmth? Well, several reasons. If Indy, let's say, was a wild bird, he still needs to hunt. not many animals he could hunt. Maybe this one right here, maybe this one. But not a lot of animals. So he needs to be out in the wild. He needs to be a wild animal hunting for his own food. And as a wild animal, let's say if he was out there and not as an education animal, he needs to find a mate and make babies. And I don't see any other red-tailed hawk in this room either. But he's a wild animal, back out into the wild if he could survive. All right, so our next guest is ready. So we met a falcon, we met a hawk. Our next guest here is Moe. We'll do a bit of a rotation here. And I feel like you guys know what kind of bird Moe is. An owl. Now, here's the thing. We take, Artemis places and we take Indy places, and sometimes people don't really know what kind of bird they are. Sometimes people ask if Artemis is a baby hawk, or sometimes people see Indy and they don't know that he's a red-tailed hawk. But when you bring an owl out, everybody knows it's an owl, right? Even 2-year-olds, have never seen an owl, have never seen a picture of an owl, know it's an owl. So I always ask people, how do you know he's an owl? How do you know? Yeah.
You can see books of like a picture that says an owl.
Okay, yeah, so maybe you see, you read a book using your resources, that's great, and you see a picture of an owl and it labels it as owl. Great, that's perfect. Anything else? What if when you see an owl right here? How do you know this one is an owl?
Because it has a rounder head.
Okay, yeah, he has a big round head. What else?
He's kind of different because he can turn his head back of his head.
Yeah, so you might notice that Indy is Moe is turning his head all the way around very robotically. What else? He's got a round head, he turns that head around. Anything else? What gave it away? How do you guys know he's an owl?
Because we know.
Because you just know.
The
Is
beak?
it that book? The beak?
It's sort of a flat beak.
Okay, yeah, so his beak doesn't stick out as much compared to the kestrel or the hawk. He kind of has a round face. Yeah.
You can't really see it so well.
Oh yeah, you can't really see his feet, right? He's very fluffy. He's got tons and tons of feathers. Yeah, those are all very, very good. Now, owls, everyone knows it's an owl because they are so unique looking, right? Most of the time, your answer is actually what I get. I ask people how they know it's an owl, and they tell me, well, it looks like an owl. But they're so unique, right? They have a nice round face, a big round head, a large facial disc, which are basically his giant ears, right? For us, we here using these weird round things we call ears. Now for owls, they have their ears as basically their entire face, this giant satellite dish that channels in all that sound so they can hear very well. A lot of the times they have a big round head and a big round body that even cover their feet because they're all so super fluffy and feathered. Sometimes you can't really see their beak as well because of all the feather on their face. And a big thing as well are those huge eyes. Right, Moe, he's a little squinty right now because I think he probably took a nap in his box and now he's in this building with bright lights, but his eyes are huge, and I think that's mostly what gives it away. All owls have these huge forward-facing eyes that we also have that are so distinct and unique looking. But for Moe, who is a barred owl, those huge eyes, he needs them. He needs them to see at night when he's out and about hunting, when there's only a bit of light from the moon. Those big eyes help him see as bright as day. Those huge eyes are so big that they take up most of the space in his skull. They're so big that if you guys were owls, your eyes would be about the size of your fist. You can hold up your fist, you can hold up both, and you can imagine your eyeballs being this size. Humongous. Now, imagine now having to put these giant eyeballs into your skull. Oh, they don't fit, right? If we were owls and if we had eyeballs this big, they do not fit in our skull because I've already checked, you guys are all humans. You have big brains. You have huge brains in your skull that take up most of the space. We have little eyes. These guys, they got huge, huge eyes and a tiny little brain. The size of his brain is probably smaller than one eye. So, not very smart at all. You see them in picture books with glasses or hats.
Owl, yes.
Somebody's lying to you. They're not smart at all. But they don't really have to be, right? They're not social animals. They're not going to school. They're not hanging out and have a language like crows do. They have these huge eyes for them to see perfectly well at night. They have amazing hearing with that big facial disc of theirs, and completely silent flight, so they can hunt perfectly well. As a barred owl, these guys are quite common here in Ontario, but we don't really see them here in southern Ontario. Barred owls, they love big forests. So our boreal forests of Ontario, if you guys go camping, or if you have a cottage right around those areas, that's where barred owls love to live. And most people usually hear barred owls before they see one at all. I realized the other day, I've never seen an Ontario barred owl myself. I've heard not millions, I've heard many, but I've never seen one at all. They have amazing camouflage, but they're very talkative. So at night, you hear them all the time. And they say something that, I'm not gonna hoot for you guys, but it sounds like they're saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" So if you hear that hooting in that pattern, next time you guys are camping, or next time you guys are, at a cottage or at a provincial park for a hike and you're staying a bit later, listen for that hooting in that pattern. And it's most likely a barred owl hiding away in that forest. Now, Moet is here with us because Moet actually does have a physical injury, unlike the first two birds that we met. Moet, he was found on the side of the road with an injured wing and an injured eye as well. And that's a very common thing that we find with raptors, is that they love hunting on the side of the road, and unfortunately they get hit by cars. Now, even though that's very sad, obviously we want all these birds to be out in the wild, not staying inside this building, even though it is nice and warm. But he shares a very, very important story. A lot of hawks and owls, they love hunting on the side of the road because there's a ton of garbage. Garbage that maybe people have thrown out their window when they eat a snack in their car. But it's not just garbage that, I feel like a lot of you guys probably know not to litter. It's not just garbage like, plastic wrappers or, a candy bar wrapper or a juice box. But it's also things like fruit matter, like an apple core, or in the summer you eat a peach, and that hard peach pit, you say, "I'm not eating this," and you toss it out the window, which I used to do as well. But those fruit matter is still going to attract small rodents like mice and chipmunks and squirrels to the side of the road that are thereby attracting these bigger guys. So even though it's very sad, he's here to ask you guys for a bit of help. You can keep that garbage, even if it is an apple core or you peel a clementine, and keep that inside of your car until you can properly dispose of it. Or maybe you guys already do that and you see a friend doing it in the car that you're driving, you can let them know, hey, let's keep that garbage until we can put it in a garbage can or a compost bin. And that way we are keeping our roadsides clean for Moet and his wild cousins. So, does anyone have any questions about Moet? We still have one more guest, and I feel like you guys will deliver as well.
How old is Moet?
Oh, Moet, we actually have no idea how old he is. So Moet, he came to us about 9 years ago, and he came to us as an adult bird. And for, after. You want to move over, I'll switch sides with you so the owl people can see the owl. So Moet, he was brought to us 9 years ago as an adult bird.
He's looking right at
And as an adult bird, he was kind of already this color and shape and size. A lot of birds, by the time they're a year old, they're fully grown, right? Their parents are kicking them out of their nest. They're on their own. You guys are still at home. You guys get fed by your parents, and you're probably gonna still be at home until you're 18, if they behave, maybe. But for these guys, 6 months and they're out. Their parents you're on your own. So they're fully grown. They basically look like an adult. Some birds have a young plumage, but barred owls don't. So he looks the same when he's 1, and he looks the same when he's 10. And so we actually have no idea how old he is. All right, so I think, okay, let's do one more.
What does he eat?
Oh, what does he eat? Yeah, Moet. So out in the wild, barred owl would hunt all sorts of little rodents or little animals. So mice, voles, chipmunks, squirrels, maybe a small rabbit if they can catch one. They would hunt other owls if they can find another owl. And barred owls are a little bit weird. They're one of the only owl species that will kind of sit in a pond of water hunting for fish and crayfish, which is a very unique food item that not a lot of owls hunt. Right. So I think we'll pop Mode away because we have one final guest. So watch out behind you, Mark. We'll go this way. So we met, okay, we'll rotate them.
He's tiny.
We met Moet, the barred owl. Our last friend of the day here is Atwood. And Atwood is much smaller. She is a northern saw-whet owl, which is our smallest species of owl here in Ontario. And she's full grown. She's also actually quite big for a saw-whet owl, if you can believe that. Atwood here, we think is a female because she is on the bigger side. In the raptor world, the females are bigger. So you can imagine a male saw-whet would be even tinier, which is crazy for me to think about. Now, as a teeny tiny owl, she's still quite ferocious. That small foot that you saw in the beginning with those razor sharp talons, that tiny foot that you saw in the beginning belongs to a saw-whet owl, just like Atwood. So extra strong feet, extra sharp talons for hunting and killing tiny little creatures out there. Now, as a saw-whet owl, just like Moet, you'll see all those amazing owl features, right? She has huge golden yellow eyes. She also is covered in a whole bunch of feathers all the way down to the tips of her toes. But to me, the most distinct thing on a saw-whet owl is that face, right? That nice round face. They almost kind of sometimes look like a cat, but really nice round face. And we briefly mentioned that excellent hearing of owls. Their nice round facial disc helps channel in all these sound waves into their ears, which are basically just holes on the side of her face. But they're weird holes. An owl's ears are asymmetrical. They have one ear that's up here, and it points upwards, their ear hole, and another ear that's a little bit lower down and points downwards. Now we as humans, as we check, all humans, we have ears that are on the same plane, right? If you touch both your ears, right, and then you draw a line to the center of your face, your fingers should meet, right? Right? Because your ears are on the same plane, they're on the same line on your face. But for an owl, one higher up, one lower down, if they were to draw a line, those fingers, if they had fingers, would not meet. But that helps them hear directionally. They can hear left and right and up and down so accurately that they can pinpoint a sound, maybe a sound of a mouse chewing on some seeds and peeing on the farm field, and hunt for that mouse just by listening for it, just by listening to the exact location of where that sound is coming from. But that also means they have to have one extra thing to assist them. An owl, I'm sure you guys all have heard, have silent flight, right? Everybody talks about owls being wise, and then they talk about silent flight. But owls, they have to have silent flight not because they're sneaking up on the food that they are trying to hunt. It's because they're using their hearing to hunt. If you are listening for your food and pinpointing exactly where that food is coming from, when you take off, your own body cannot make a single sound, so you can still hear. I kind of think of it as, you know, when you're watching TV, okay, everyone's pretending like we're watching TV, and then we start snacking on a carrot stick, or chips, or popcorn, and then you can't really hear the TV anymore. So these guys, they have to be able to fly and chase after an animal without making a single sound. So their wings and their feathers are completely made for that, right? They have super soft feathers. You can pass this around. If you guys all hold the wing at the top here, and then you can touch the feathers with a nice flat hand. You'll notice that these feathers are silky, silky soft. And that allows them to flap without making a single sound. It's almost like cotton candy if you look at an owl's feather under a microscope. There's so much air, there's so much fluff in it that when they flap, they're not making any noise at all. On the edge of the wing, at the very top edge, there's also an additional kind of feature that almost looks like eyelashes at the end of the feather that breaks up the air as well. So it creates less drag and it creates less noise. So completely silent flight so that when they're chasing their food, they can still listen for it with their excellent hearing. Now, Atwood, I don't know if you guys can see me, Mark can move her back up front a little bit. You might notice that she has a bit of a weird wing. Notice that. Now, Atwood, she actually only has a wing and a half this way. She only has a wing and a half. Atwood was found with that wing injury, and we don't exactly know what happened, but it was healed in a way that it was pretty uncomfortable for her. It was dragging along on the ground after it was healed. And so when she came to our program, our vet team decided that it was probably better for her welfare to move around with half of that wing and not that full one dragging her. We have no idea what happened with Atwood. We can ask her, but she cannot tell us. But we can take a few guesses. With owls, a common thing can be maybe she got hit by a car, like Moe. Or maybe as a migratory species, a solid owl could have hit a window. But they're kind of migrating at night, so it's not like the bright lights are reflecting those windows. We think a big cause or threat to small birds out in the wild, just like Atwood, are outdoor cats. So cats that are roaming around outside in someone's backyard. Cats are natural predators. They love to chase, they love to catch, they love to hunt, and sometimes they even love to kill small animals out there in the wild. Sometimes they don't kill them. And so it's very possible that Atwood could have been caught by a cat, injured her wing, but somehow got away. But as all the other birds, it's a sad story. We want Atwood out there in the wild, but she, teaches everybody that cat can live a very enriching life indoors, away and not causing harm to her cousins out there in the wild. So that's Atwood. Everyone get a look at the wing here. Silky soft feathers, eh?
Yeah.
I'll show the people on Zoom as well. Amazing. Cool. So does anyone have any questions about Atwood or else? Did you remember your question?
Where did you, how, where did you find it?
Where did we find Atwood? So Atwood, she also came to us from a wildlife hospital. somebody found her out in the wild on the ground and already had that wing broken. So they saw an owl that shouldn't be on the ground and should be flying, and they called the wildlife hospital, and that wildlife hospital called us after that. Yes.
How old is she?
Oh, how old is Atwood? So Atwood, even though she's so tiny, she's actually quite an old lady for a saw-whet owl. She is turning 7 years old this year. Yeah. You're 7. Well, you're not an old lady. You still got many years left in you, hopefully. Atwood here, she's as a tiny little bird. 7 is quite old, which is hard to imagine because you guys are 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
If Atwell was not injured, who would win? Atwood or Agnes?
Artemis? Oh, that is a great question. I actually really love these silly questions because let's say Atwood was fully flighted, right? Let's say Atwood had both her wings and she could fly. Would she be able to beat Artemis, or would Artemis beat her? Now, here's the thing. We have to, first off, break up the differences, right? Atwood here, she's an owl, so she's going to be great at nighttime. And Artemis, she's a daytime bird, so she's going to be great during the daytime. When are they fighting? Night or day?
Dusk or dawn?
Dusk or dawn.
That's good.
That's very good. I think during dusk or dawn, she will still see better than Artemis. I think Artemis, as a fast animal, needs as bright as possible so she can see clearly when she's moving so fast. But these guys, they can see when there's not a lot of light. They can see when there still is a lot of light. You know, even in here, it's super bright. Atwood can still see. So I think Atwood was be able to hide away, great camouflage, and with Artemis zipping around during dusk or dawn, probably wouldn't be able to spot Atwood if she was hidden away in a very dense evergreen tree, like a pine tree or spruce tree. Let's say Artemis did see her though. I think Artemis would win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feisty, fast little things. That's a good question. Yeah.
How long did she live?
Oh, that's a great question. So Atwood, as a tiny little bird, we did mention she's an old lady, she would hopefully live until she's maybe 10 years old, and that's pretty good. All right, any other questions? Yeah.
What's their major predator?
Oh, yeah. What's a major predator of a saw-whet owl? I guess other birds. So, you know, if a bigger owl found one at night, we would probably try and hunt saw-whet owls. Like I said, in the nest, you know, mammals are big predators like raccoons, weasels. I guess not many. Like if a kestrel maybe found one during the day, or if a bigger falcon, like a merlin, found a saw-whet owl during the day, I think a merlin would keep that thing right up.
Barred owls especially.
Yeah, big owls.
What else have they found in like the wild? Like, do they live in forests or
Yeah.
what's their
Yep.
habitat?
Saw-whet owls definitely love forests. They're quite secretive. Given their size, they kind of have to just hide away as much as possible. They are mostly found in kind of our denser forests as well, like the boreal forest, but they would still be found in the, I guess in the summer, they would mostly be found in those dense forests. And then they are actually one of our few migratory species. So they move around a whole bunch, and you can see saw-whet owls in southern Ontario as well during the winter. Yes?
What's the size limit for eating prey?
Oh, that's a great question. What's the size limit for a saw-whet owl? So saw-whet owls, they're quite picky eaters during their non-migration. So when they're kind of like at home in the spring and summer and fall, they hunt mostly small rodents, like mice and voles, sometimes shrews if they can catch one. But during migration, you can't be as picky, right? Because you're moving around, you have to hunt, you have to fuel up. And so they're less picky during migration. They'll hunt moths at night, they'll hunt other birds if they can find them, and they'll hunt bats as well. Which is pretty cool. Which is like, I guess, basically her size-ish. Some smaller, some bigger. Yes.
Which meters, how long it is?
Oh, how long is it? How long are her wings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you asking about her wings?
No, her body.
Her body? Well, that body. So her outside body, including her feathers, is this big. But her body itself, without her feathers, is probably only about that big. They have tons of feathers, a really long neck, and really long legs. So you can imagine her neck probably goes down to about, like right around there. So it's like here, if you look at me proportionally. And then her legs are really long as well, and they go to about there. And so her body is really like that big.
Wow.
Teeny tiny. She weighs basically about 90 grams, which is like a chocolate bar. After you take a bite out of it, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you give them baths?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, do we give them bats? No, unless they're like really, really dirty. But most of them kind of take care of their, cleanliness themselves, which isn't very clean. They'll preen their feathers, so they'll use their beak to clean out all the dust and waterproof their feathers and make sure it's nice and organized. And then occasionally they'll take a bath, especially in the summer months when it can be a bit warmer. They'll, everyone gets a water dish and they'll sit in there and take a bath themselves. But sometimes if they are really dirty, maybe they have poop on their feathers, we might help them out a little bit. Yeah. Yes.
Can Artwood fight anything bigger than her?
Okay. I would find anything, like hunt anything bigger. Well, I don't think she can hunt a polar bear. That's way too big, exactly. So I think she would be able to hunt something that's only slightly bigger than her. Maybe a bigger bat. But most of the things you have to imagine has to fit in her tiny little feet.
Another owl?
Maybe another solid owl.
No.
Yeah, it's possible, for sure. Right, so I think what we'll do is, I know we still have a bit of time, but I want you guys to have an opportunity to come on up and take a few pictures. We can bring out a bird or two again, and that will stay out. And give you guys a chance to come up and check some of these bio artifacts as well. But before we do that, and before these guys don't get a chance to touch and take pictures, I always like to think back about the birds that you guys met today. So we met Artemis, the American kestrel, who is super fast hunting for dragonflies and punching birds out in the air and hovering, looking for mouse pea. And we met Indiana, the red-tailed hawk, who was not fast, but rather quite lazy and energy efficient. We met Mowat with his huge, big eyes, and Atwood with her amazing hearing. And the list of adaptations from these birds go on and on. They have amazing things that help them survive out in the wild. But for each of them, I think my favorite thing about each of the birds you guys met is they live right here in Ontario. We get to share, or actually they are sharing their natural spaces and their habitats with us. We get to walk around in a forest or a big open farm field where there are raptors all around us, which I think is pretty cool. And I also think that the best thing we can do to help these guys out in the wild is what you guys are doing right now. So getting opportunities to learn about the birds and creatures all around us, getting excited about it, and maybe even sharing it with your friends and family when you go home or when you go back to school. Because the more people we have excited about these birds, the more people we have wanting to help them when that time comes. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. I think what we'll do is we'll keep Atwood up here. We'll bring out another bird. You guys can come on up. We'll bring out a few other bio artifacts as well. But otherwise, if you guys need to go, thank you guys for joining us, and I hope you guys had a great night.
Thank you.
If you don't follow, already